Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We'll begin in just a few moments. We'll allow for some of the folks that are still joining in to enter. A reminder, you're welcome to keep your cameras on or off as you feel comfortable, but please do make sure that your audio is muted, especially during the meditation. So taking a moment maybe just to check that. Taking a moment also to find that comfortable seat. As we often talk about, our meditation invites us to find what's called sukhasana. Sukhasana, which literally means happy posture or seat. Another meaning of asana is seat. So happy seat. It also means comfortable seat. It means a seat or a posture, position of ease that allows us to be both relaxed and yet also focused and attentive. Invitation here to close the eyes if we haven't already done so. Closing the eyes allows us to, with intention and purpose, to mark off a boundary between the external world and the space within that we are aspiring to connect with. If closing the eyes feels inaccessible or uncomfortable, we can simply soften the gaze. In a moment or two, I'll ring the bell and we'll begin our meditation with intentionally and gently taking 3 deep breaths in and out. Breathing in, holding the breath for some beats, and then releasing the breath. And of course, you're welcome to follow along with me or to find a pace and measure that works for you. Breathing in, hold, and out. In, hold, release. In, holding, and out. For some of us, maybe today we're holding on to a lot, we're experiencing a lot. I can say for myself, I feel a weight. I feel like I'm carrying. It's not always a bad thing. It's part of the experience of life. But perhaps if we'd like to, if we feel like maybe we need a little bit more softening today, just allowing ourselves maybe one more exaggerated deep breath in and exaggerated breathing out, perhaps even sighing out. Breathing in deeply and letting it out. And now allowing our breath to come back to its natural rhythm, to a pace and a flow that feels right and comfortable in this moment. Sometimes this is just a matter of letting the breath settle, just taking those few moments. And as we do that, we can begin to focus our awareness, our observation, our noticing, just on this simple but beautiful process of breathing. Noticing the sensation of breath. Noticing perhaps the texture of the breath. When we talk about noticing the texture of breath, it's an invitation to just notice how it feels, not what we think about it, not fitting it into categories of good or bad or right or wrong. Just noticing what it feels like to breathe right now. Noticing what our body is experiencing on the sensory level as that precious air flows in and out of us. Noticing on the emotional level what feelings accompany the air as it goes into us, and what it feels like emotionally to let it out. If we're struggling to identify how we're feeling, allowing ourselves the gift of not knowing, of not being able to articulate it. And perhaps even making some space for curiosity. So often we take for granted the power of asking the question. And we focus so much energy on whatever we imagine the answer to be. Invoking curiosity is also noticing the power, the beauty, the grace of just asking the question. Continuing to notice the breath. And perhaps also tuning our awareness to where the mind is. Checking in. Is the mind with us, with the breath, with the curiosity and the noticing? Or has it gone somewhere else? If it's gone somewhere else, or if it's going somewhere else, with kindness and with firmness, bringing it back. Sit with us in this moment, mind, just for a little bit longer. You have so many places you need to be, so many things you want to do. We'll do those things. We'll visit those places. And now is a time of rest and of quiet. My dear mind, you're so much more than all of your doing. Come sit with us and just be. Just for a few more minutes. O mind, our meditation is almost coming to its end. Maybe today you're distracted or anxious. Maybe you're bored. Oh, friend, we have just a few more moments to notice this wondrous breath, to appreciate that each breath in is unique. It's not like the one that came before it, but it's indebted to the one that came before it. It's not like the one that will come after it, but it helps to create the one that will come after it. It's just this amazing, wondrous, present breath. And mind, all we have to do in this moment is notice it. Continuing to focus on the breath. We'll take one final deep breath in together, and on the exhale, chant or hear and be present to the mantra, the sacred sound vibration of the infinite. Om. Om. Gently and in a way that feels comfortable, opening the eyes, returning our awareness, our presence to the room that we're sitting in and to our virtual room here together. Last week, we began to explore this idea of taming the mind. Our reflection again is taming the mind means bringing it back with kindness, with firmness, and exercising discernment. And I shared, for those of you who were able to join us, you may recall I shared this very powerful teaching from the Gita that recommends that we bring back repeatedly, we bring back the mind that wanders back to focus on the self, back to that present moment, that groundedness. We talked about the mind wandering, not because it's bad or evil or hopelessly at fault, but because the nature of the mind is that it is Um, Krishna uses the Sanskrit word chanchala. Chanchala means flickering. Asthiram. Asthiram means without steadiness, without being fixed. So it's unsteady and it's flickering. This is the nature of the mind. And we just started to talk about replacing, perhaps, especially for those of us who, as part of our practices in the past, we've invoked these metaphors of conquering the mind, or even as I've heard some teachers use language of defeating the mind, almost like in this military sense, conquering, defeating, beating down into submission. For many of us, these are the metaphors that we turn to, and this is an invitation to shift, to use a different metaphor. And the metaphor we'd like to talk about, or continue to talk about, is that of the mind as a child. Imagine taking a child to a grocery store on a day where you have a lot of shopping to do and you've got a shopping list. Always a good idea to go to do your grocery shopping, whether it's online or in person, with a list, right? So what is that list in our metaphor and our analogy? To go into our endeavors and especially our practice with intention, right? Not just sort of wandering around and bumping into things. That can be a fun experience, but when we go into the grocery store, in order to find that nutritious food to nourish ourselves and our families, it's helpful to have a list. It's helpful to have a sense of intention. And we go in even with the best of intention, and we bring our little ones with us. And those who are parents on the call, you may be able to relate to this in a more immediate way. We bring our little ones with us, and what happens? Immediately, there are distractions. There is a pull this way or that way. There's a reaction, either an attraction towards things that are maybe not on our list, or our diversions and distractions, or I should say, and, because often that's also accompanied by restlessness and boredom. How long do we have to be here? Can we go home already? Can we go somewhere else? So when we look at this dynamic of healthy or attuned parenting, I don't want to say good parenting and bad parenting, because again, that brings us in that place of judgment. But when we think about healthy, attuned, sustainable parenting, we think about a certain dynamic between the child and parent. And what yoga philosophy does, I think, so brilliantly and so powerfully, is it invites us to embrace that same dynamic when it comes to the inner parent and child. Yoga philosophy talks about the mind really as two minds inhabiting the same person. That we can understand there's the childlike reactive mind, and there's the parent-like discerning mind. So chanchala, flickering, the reactive mind, when we sit down to meditate, or even when we are in the midst of a situation that can be incredibly trying or triggering for us in some way, the reactive mind, that like a hyperactive child, what does it do? It wants to jump here and there. It wants to look at this, do that, talk about this, think about that. It wants basically to run around and not be in that same place, not be still, right? So imagine the child that wants to run around, that wants to grab this. I want this. I love this. I hate that, right? Gravitating towards these dualities of raga, dvesha, attachment, aversion, like, dislike. And that mind, even when it's doing that, and even when it's not doing that, that mind has a childlike sort of restlessness, right? Have you ever sat for a meditation and maybe you had your eyes closed and you imagined, oh, so much time must have passed already. It's time to open my eyes, and oh my gosh, I'm just, my phone is probably blowing up with messages and notifications, and oh, what have I been indulging in for all these hours? And then you open your eyes and it's hardly been 10 minutes. But this is the nature of that unsteady, restless mind. It can really make us sort of lean into that boredom or that discomfort with being still and steady. And just like a child in the grocery store, right? Why do we have to do this? And can we go here? And can we do that? And this is boring. And I don't like this. But again, that attuned parent, what does it do? It remains stable. They remain stable and focused and firm. The parent neither gives in to the child, right? Okay, I guess you're right. This is boring. Let's not do this anymore. Yeah, I guess you're right. Let's just throw the list out the window and just, oh, look, there's some candy and there's some sugary cereals and here are some toys and let's just do that now. The attuned parent doesn't do that, but nor does the attuned parent have a meltdown and start screaming at the child, right? At least we want to aspire towards, we're all works in progress, but we want to be in that place where we're able to parent and guide from a place of stability, of focus, of firmness, but also of patience and consistency. Notice in the verse, Krishna talks about repeatedly bringing the mind back. So it's not a one and done. We're patient and we recognize this is the nature of a child. This is not for me to blame or shame the child, but it's also not an excuse for me to abdicate my responsibility. My duty that I owe to this child, my responsibility, my sacred trust is to patiently and consistently bring this child back to a place of stability, to a place of calm and quiet, even in the midst of whatever else is happening. When we start thinking about the dynamic of the discerning mind and the reactive mind like that, then not only do we tap into that power of disciplining the mind and bringing the mind back, as this verse reminds us, but it also allows us to appreciate all the wonderful things that our minds, our childlike minds, bring to the equation, right? Children are wonderful reminders of seeing the world through the eyes of wonder and amazement and innocence. Notice how excited a child is with the simplest things, especially at times like this where you go outside and there's this blossoming springtime. How often do we take the time to notice that? It's a cliche, but how often do we stop to smell those blooming and blossoming flowers, or to appreciate the wonders and intricacy of the divine creation all around us? So often we keep our heads down or glued to our phones or our devices, or we focus on all of the things that are draining us and are sources of anxiety and of negativity. And it's not that those things aren't real and that they don't need to be dealt with, but imagine if we could intentionally, even for just a few minutes every day, go outside and experience the world the way this small child is experiencing flower petals and leaves and just the feeling of the grass under our feet, right? When we're able to realign that relationship of parent and child, of discerning mind and reactive mind, then we're able to tap into that childlike nature in its most wonderful, healthiest way without it taking us astray and distracting us, right? So an invitation and our reflection again is an invitation to think about taming the mind in this way of parenting the mind. Taming the mind means bringing it back with kindness, firmness, and discernment. So thank you all again for joining us for this weekly experience of meditation and of reflection. I'm so happy to have you all join us. Please join us again next week. And this is a program that is offered through the Hindu Life program at Princeton University and is also open to all, whether you have an established practice or not, however one may identify or not with a particular faith tradition. This is really a space for whoever would like to just take some time out and experience it. So we're always grateful to have you, and welcome you to let friends and loved ones know to join us every Tuesday at noon. Thanks so much. Have a wonderful rest of your day and the rest of your week. Thank you. Namaste.